Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Today our topic of discussion is congestive cardiac failure or congestive heart failure or heart failure. What is congestive cardiac failure or heart failure? When the cardiac output is inadequate to provide the oxygen needed by the body, this condition is called congestive cardiac failure, or commonly abbreviated as CCF or CHF, congestive heart failure, congestive cardiac failure. There is increase in heart rate and there is force of contraction of cardiac muscle is decreased in congestive cardiac failure. It is a highly lethal condition with a 5-year mortality rate conventionally said to be about 50%. The most common cause of heart failure is coronary artery disease or atherosclerosis, as well as hypertension is also an important factor for causing congestive failure, congestive cardiac failure. There are two major types of heart failure. Systolic failure, where there is contractility and ejection fraction of the heart are reduced. Second is diastolic failure, in which there is stiffening and loss of adequate relaxation plays a major role in reducing cardiac output, and ejection fraction may be normal. So this is the difference between systolic failure and diastolic failure. Or we can have a low output failure, which is further subdivided into systolic and diastolic. And second type is high output cardiac failure. High output cardiac failure, the demands of the body are so great that even increased cardiac output is insufficient. So this results from hyperthyroidism, beriberi, anemia, and arteriovenous shunts. This form of failure responds poorly to the drugs used traditionally, or which we are going to discuss in detail. They should be treated by correcting the underlying cause. So if you treat hypertension, hyperthyroidism or beriberi or anemia or AV shunt, then the high output cardiac failure will be controlled. Signs and symptoms of all types of heart failure include tachycardia, decreased exercise tolerance, shortness of breath, peripheral and pulmonary edema, cardiomegaly, hepatomegaly, raised jugular veins. The severity of the heart failure is usually described according to a scale devised by the New York Heart Association. Class 1 failure is associated with no limitation on ordinary activities and symptoms that occur only with greater than ordinary exercise. Class 2 is characterized by slight limitation of ordinary activities which result in fatigue and palpitation with ordinary physical activity. Class 3 heart failure results in no symptoms at rest but fatigue, etc. with less than ordinary physical activity, while Class 4 is associated with symptoms even when the patient is at rest. Neurohumoral or extrinsic compensation involves two major mechanisms: sympathetic nervous system and renin-angiotensin-aldosterone hormonal response. This results in tachycardia, increased cardiac contractility, increased vascular tone, and increased volume in blood vessels. While intrinsic compensatory mechanisms are: number one, myocardial hypertrophy. Increase in muscle mass helps maintain cardiac performance. However, after initial beneficial effects, Hypertrophy can lead to ischemic changes, impairment of diastolic filling, and alterations in ventricular geometry. Second intrinsic compensatory mechanism is remodeling, that is dilatation. Other than that, due to passive stretch and other slow structural changes that occur in the stressed myocardium. Also includes proliferation of the connective tissue cells, fibrosis, and proliferation of abnormal myocardial cells with some biochemical characteristics of fetal myocytes. Ultimately, myocytes in the failing heart die at an accelerated rate through apoptosis, leaving the remaining myocytes subject to even greater stress. Is brought about by angiotensin. All these changes, internal intrinsic compensatory changes, they are brought about by angiotensin, aldosterone, adrenaline, and noradrenaline. Drugs which target these three they prolong life through inhibiting the vicious cycle. So we have to block angiotensin, aldosterone, or norepinephrine and epinephrine effects. So all these drugs which are going to modify the effects of angiotensin, aldosterone, or adrenaline and noradrenaline, they are going to prolong the life by inhibiting the vicious cycle. Drugs, these are the classes of drugs which are used for the treatment of congestive cardiac failure. Previously, the inotropic drugs, they were considered as number one, a drug of choice, but due to their toxicity, and secondly, the beneficial effects and less toxicity of other groups, now the drug of choice have become ACE inhibitors or ARBs. So we start with ACE inhibitor or AC inhibitors or angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors, captopril, enalapril, fosinopril, lisinopril, conapril, and ramipril, and many others. Then second group is, our second class are the angiotensin receptor blocker or ARBs, candesartan, losartan, telmisartan, valsartan, irbesartan, and many others. Among the beta adrenoceptor blockers, in chronic heart failure, we can use beta blockers, but the use of beta blocker is limited. Only these three beta blockers, atenolol, carvedilol, metoprolol. Please remember these names: ACM, atenolol, carvedilol, and metoprolol. These are the three beta blockers which can be used for the treatment of congestive cardiac failure. Then the next class is the diuretics: bumetanide, furosemide, hydrochlorothiazide, metolazone. Next are the direct vasodilators. Next class is direct vasodilator: hydralazine, isosorbide dinitrate, isosorbide mononitrate, or sodium nitroprusside in case of emergency. Next, very important, which we will go discuss in detail that in this lecture, are the inotropic agents. Digoxin is main drug which we are going to discuss in detail. Dobutamine, enoxaparin, milrinone. Then comes aldosterone antagonist, eplerenone and spironolactone. These are the 7 classes of drugs which are used in the treatment of congestive cardiac failure. Positive inotropic drugs, and most important is digitalis are cardioglycosides, which are also called cardiac steroids or cardiololides. These are the cardioglycosides which act on the heart. Digitalis is the genus name for the family of plants called foxglove that provide most of the medically useful cardioglycosides. Two species of digitalis, that is digitalis purpura, purple foxglove plant, and digitalis lanata or white foxglove plant. These are the cardioglycosides which are clinically used, and they are obtained from these plants. These are the digitoxin, gitoxinone, and gitelin in purpura, while digitoxin, digoxin, gitoxin is in digitalis lanata. Such plants have been known for thousands of years but were used erratically and with variable success as emetics, expectorant, diuretics until 1785, when William Witherings, an English physician and botanist, published a monograph describing the clinical effects of an extract of the purple foxglove plant. As far as the chemistry of these cardioglycoside is concerned, all have steroid nucleus linked to a lacton ring at the 17th position and a series of sugars at carbon 3 of the nucleus. For pharmacodynamic or pharmacological activity, steroid and lacton rings, which is called aglycone or genin, which is a non-carbohydrate part, activity resides in aglycone. That means this non-carbohydrate part is giving you cardiac glycoside activity, while sugar molecule does not show any cardiac activity, but they are mainly concerned about the pharmacokinetics of these cardioglycosides. As far as the pharmacokinetics, these cardioglycosides, they are absorbed orally. All cardioglycosides are widely distributed in all tissues and in the CNS, heart, liver and kidneys. The concentration may be 10 to 50 times higher than plasma. Digoxin, after oral administration, 75% is absorbed. Plasma protein binding is 20 to 40%. Plasma half-life is 40 hours, prolonged in renal impairment. Low margin of safety. No extensive metabolism in the body, largely excreted unchanged by the kidney. While digitoxin, that is after oral administration, 90% is absorbed. Plasma protein binding is more than 90%. Plasma half-life is 168 hours due to enterohepatic circulation as compared to digoxin, which is just 40 hours. So that means more than 4 times. It is mainly digitoxin is metabolized in the liver, excreted into the gut via bile. So renal impairment does not prolong the half-life of digitoxin. So it is useful in this condition when there is a renal dysfunction. So instead of using digoxin, we can use digitoxin. These cardioglycosides, they have narrow therapeutic index. That means if you slightly change the dose, that is going to give you the toxicity or failure of the treatment. Pharmacodynamics, that means the effects of cardioglycosides on different tissues. First, we discuss the effects on the heart, our cardiac effects. They are divided into mechanical effects and electrical effects. Cardiac glycosides increase contraction of the cardiac sarcomere by increasing the free calcium concentration in the vicinity of the contractile protein during systole. The increase in calcium concentration is the result of two-step processes. Number one, the first, an increase of intracellular sodium concentration because of sodium potassium ATPase inhibition. In very low concentration of digitalis that stimulates this enzyme, but in therapeutic dosage which we are using, this is going to inhibit this sodium potassium ATPase enzyme. Second, a relative reduction of calcium expulsion from the cell by the sodium calcium exchanger caused by the increase in intracellular sodium. So as a result of inhibition of sodium potassium ATPase, there is increased concentration of sodium inside the cell. So when there is more sodium already in the myocardium or myocardial cell, there is this exchanger mechanism, which is when sodium goes in, there is a expulsion of calcium. So when less sodium will come in, less calcium will go out. The increased cytoplasmic calcium is sequestered by the sarcoplasm for later release. The net result of the action of therapeutic concentration of cardiac glycoside is a distinctive increase in cardiac contractility. This effect occurs in both normal and failing myocardium. In this diagram, we see how the sarcomere, a functional myocardial cell, how the cardiac glycoside on the right upper side is going to inhibit sodium potassium ATPase enzyme, which is called sodium pump. So by inhibiting this, the cardiac glycoside inhibits sodium potassium pump, which results in intracellular sodium accumulation. And when this is accumulated, the next second process, exchanger, sodium calcium exchanger mechanism will operate, and less sodium will come in and less the calcium will go out. So as a net effect will be there is increased concentration of calcium inside the cell, and that is going to come in close vicinity of myofilament, which is a contractile part of the sarcomere. The electrical effects, the effects of digitalis on the electrical properties of the heart are a mixture of direct and autonomic actions. Autonomic actions of cardiac glycosides on the heart involve both the parasympathetic and the sympathetic systems. In lower portion of the dose range, cardioselective parasympathomimetic effects predominate. At toxic levels, sympathetic outflow is increased by digitalis. This effect is not essential for typical digitalis toxicity, but sensitizes the myocardium and exaggerate all the toxic effects of the drug. So in toxic doses, sympathomimetic outflow is increased, while in lower or normal therapeutic doses, the cardiac glycoside, they are parasympathomimetic. This is showing you the effects at the different sites of the heart, SA node, atrial and ventricular muscles, AV node, and then effects on the ECG at therapeutic doses when the effect is parasympathomimetic effect. at toxic dosage, which is overloading of the calcium, which is going to be symptomatic effects. So on SA node, the effect, electrical effect will be there is a decrease in heart rate, and it remains to start with. There is decrease in heart rate at toxic doses, but atrial and ventricular muscles, there is decreased refractory period at toxic doses, extrasystole, tachycardia, fibrillation, they are seen at toxic doses. At AV node, there is a decreased conduction velocity, that means that is going to decrease the heart rate, and at toxic doses there is increased conduction velocity and arrhythmias, or it's arrhythmogenic. Then effects on the ECG at normal therapeutic dosage, this is going to increase PR interval, slowed conduction through AV node. Due to slowed conduction through AV node, there is increased PR, there is a decreased QT interval, there may be T wave inversion. So these are at normal therapeutic dose. While in toxic dosage, digitalis or cardiac glycoside can give any sort of arrhythmias, starting from bigeminy, that means one normal and one, and then there one normal and one abnormal, tachycardias, fibrillation, even arrest can take place in toxic dosage. So sequence seen when we start digitalis at higher concentrations, resting membrane potential is reduced. That means that is made more positive as a result of inhibition of sodium pump and reduced intracellular potassium. 3 sodium ions are retained inside. As toxicity progresses, oscillatory depolarization after potential or DADs appear falling normally evoked action potential. The after potentials, also known as delayed after depolarization or DADs, are associated with overloading of the intracellular calcium stores. When after potentials reach threshold, they elicit premature depolarization or ectopic beats that are coupled to the preceding normal action potentials. If after potentials regularly reach the threshold, this will set bigeminy will be recorded on electrocardiogram. With further intoxication, self-sustaining tachycardia will be established. If allowed to progress, such a tachycardia may deteriorate into fibrillation. In the case of ventricular fibrillation, the arrhythmia will be rapidly fatal unless corrected. The most common cardiac manifestation of digitalis toxicity are premature ventricular beats or PVCs, bigeminal rhythm, ventricular fibrillation, second degree at atrioventricular blockade or AV block. It is claimed that digitalis can cause virtually any arrhythmias. Effects on other organs other than the heart. Cardiac glycoside affect all excitable tissues, including smooth muscle and the CNS, our central nervous system. This smooth GIT, the gastrointestinal tract, is the most common site of digital toxicity outside the heart, which will present with anorexia, loss of appetite, nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea. This toxicity may be partially caused by direct effects on the GIT, but is also the result of central nervous system actions. Central nervous system effects, vagal and chemoreceptor trigger zone stimulation, less often disorientation and hallucinations. Then there will be visual disturbances, including aberration of the color perceptions, halos around the light. Then, very important on chronic use, gynecomastia is seen in men taking digitalis for a prolonged period. Interaction with potassium, calcium, and magnesium. These electrolytes, potassium and digitalis interact in two ways. First, they inhibit each other's binding to sodium potassium ATPase, which is sodium pump. Therefore, hyperkalemia reduces the enzyme inhibitory action of the cardiac glycoside, whereas hypokalemia facilitates these actions. Second, abnormal cardiac atomicity is inhibited by hyperkalemia. Moderately increased extracellular potassium therefore reduces the effect of digitalis, especially the toxic effects. Then interaction with calcium ions. Calcium facilitates the toxic actions of cardiac glycosides by accelerating the overloading of intracellular calcium stores that appears to be responsible for digitalis induced abnormal atomicity. Hypercalcemia therefore increases the risk of digitalis induced arrhythmias. Next is the magnesium ions appear to be opposite to those of calcium. So these are important with these electrolytes or ions. Clinical applications of digitalis or cardiac glycoside. Number one, chronic heart failure. Indicated in heart failure plus atrial fibrillation. Most helpful in patients with a dilated heart and third heart sound. It is usually given only if diuretics and ACE or AC inhibitors or angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors have failed to control the symptoms. Only about 50% of the patient with normal sinus rhythm will have relief of heart failure from digitalis. If the decision is made to use the cardiac glycoside, digoxin is the one chosen in great majority of the cases. When symptoms are mild, slow loading digitalization with 0.125 to 0.25 milligram per day is safer and just as effective as a rapid method, that is 0.5 to 0.75 milligram every 8 hours for 3 doses, followed by 0.125 to 0.25 milligram per day. Determining the optimal level of digitalis effect may be difficult. Unfortunately, toxic effects may occur before the therapeutic endpoint is detected. Although the drug has no net effect on mortality, it reduces hospitalization from progressive heart failure at the expense of an increase in sudden death. Serum digoxin concentration 0.9 nanogram per ml to 1.5 nanogram per ml is serum digoxin concentration therapeutically. Second clinical indication is atrial arrhythmias. Because of its parasympathomimetic effects, or vagal-like effect, or vagal stimulating effect, in atrial flutter and fibrillation, the depressant effect of the drug on AV or atrioventricular conduction will help control an excessive high ventricular rate. The third indication is paroxysmal atrioventricular nodal tachycardia. At present, calcium channel blockers and adenosine are preferred for this application. Digitalis should be avoided in the therapy of arrhythmias associated with Wolff, Parkinson's, White syndrome or WPW syndrome, because it increases the probability of conduction of arrhythmias, atrial impulses through the alternative rapidly conducting atrioventricular pathway. Toxicity, digitalis toxicity. 25% of the hospitalized patients show toxicity, digital toxicity. Important cause is concurrent administration of diuretics as well as other drugs like NSAIDs and cholestyramine and other drugs which are used for other indications. They can cause toxicity by increasing the displacement, like guanidine, the NSAID, they displace digoxin from the binding sites. So one has to be careful while dealing with the case who is on digoxin to use these drugs. Toxicity, mainly the GIT, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, abdominal pain, CNS hallucinations, confusional, maybe visual disturbances, chronic toxicity, overloading due to overloading of calcium in the myocardium, which can cause arrhythmia virtually of any kind. While acute toxicity, parasympathetic effect, they dominate. Cardiac arrest or bradycardia rather than arrhythmias. Bradycardia and cardiac arrest, serum digitalis and potassium levels and the electrocardiogram should always be monitored during therapy of significant digital toxicity. As far as the management of toxicity is concerned, mild toxicity presenting with visual changes or gastrointestinal disturbance generally require no more than reducing the dose of the drug, say 1 or 2 days off per week, or reducing the dose will be sufficient. In severe acute intoxication, parasympathetic effects, serum potassium will already be elevated at the time of the diagnosis because of potassium loss from the intracellular compartment of the skeletal muscles and other tissues. Atomicity is usually depressed, and antiarrhythmic agents administered in this setting may lead to cardiac arrest. Such patients are best treated with prompt insertion of temporary cardiac pacemaker catheter and administration of digitalis antibodies, digoxin immune, FAB. These antibodies recognize digitalis or digoxin and cardiac glycoside from many other plants in addition to digoxin. They are extremely useful in reversing severe intoxication with most glycosides. Chronic intoxication, you need to correction of potassium deficiency caused by other drugs. You can give oral or parenteral potassium. Should not be raised above 5 milliequivalent per liter. Correction of magnesium deficiency, antiarrhythmics like phenytoin sodium or lidocaine are used. Don't impair contractility too much. Then digitalis antibodies, digoxin immune, FAB. When other fail, you can use the antibodies, digitalis antibodies. Other positive inotropic drugs that inhibit phosphodiesterase enzyme like bipridines and levosimendan, etc., and beta adenoceptor stimulants. They are positive inotropic agents. Bipridines, enamioron, previously called as amrinon, and milrinone. As far as the pharmacokinetics is concerned, active orally as well as parenterally, but are only available in parenteral form. Elimination half-lives of these drugs is 3 to 6 hours. As far as the pharmacodynamics is concerned, they inhibit phosphodiesterase isozyme 3 or PDE3, the enzymes that inactivate cyclic AMP and cyclic GMP. This results in an increase in cyclic AMP and cyclic GMP, which is going to cause increase in myocardial contractility by increasing inward calcium flux in the heart through L-type calcium channels. They also have an important vasodilating effect by inhibiting myosin-actin interaction. As far as the toxicity of bipyridines are concerned, amrinone, nausea and vomiting, arrhythmias, thrombocytopenia, and liver enzyme changes, while with milrinone appear less likely to cause bone marrow and liver toxicity than amrinone, but it does cause arrhythmias. Clinical use only intravenously, only for acute heart failure or for severe exacerbation of chronic heart failure. We can use these bipyridines. Next drug is investigational, levacimendane, that sensitizes the troponin system to calcium, also inhibit phosphodiesterase and some vasodilatation. In addition to inotropic effect, some early clinical trials suggest that this drug may be useful in patients with heart failure. This is another investigational steroid derivative, ceftriaxone. Mechanism is it increases contractility by inhibiting sodium potassium ATPase like cardiac glycosides, but in addition also sequesters calcium by sarcoplasmic reticulum. Advantage over glycoside is it is less arrhythmogenic. That means it's safe. Then come the beta adrenoceptor stimulants, dobutamine and dopamine. They can be used in acute heart failure or congestive failure, mainly the selective beta-1 agonist that has been most widely used in patients with heart failure is dobutamine. Parenteral drug mechanism is increase in cardiac output potential for producing angina and arrhythmias as well as tachyphylaxis. Also can cause intermittent dobutamine infusion can be given, may benefit some patients with chronic heart failure. Dopamine is also used that increases cardiac output plus renal blood flow by their action on D1 receptors. They can be used in acute failure and in shock. Next are those drugs without positive inotropic effects, which are clinically very useful in the treatment of heart failure. First line therapy for chronic heart failure are diuretics, ACE inhibitors or ACE, angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors, ARBs or angiotensin receptor antagonists or blockers, then beta blockers, vasodilators. In acute failure, diuretics and vasodilator also play important role. Diuretics, mainly the loop diuretics, acute and chronic heart failure. Sometimes you can use thiazide diuretics, mild chronic failure, and also you can use aldosterone antagonist, spironolactone in chronic heart failure. Mechanism of the diuretics, how they are going to be beneficial in case of congestive heart failure or congestive cardiac failure. They increase excretion of salt and water. They reduce preload and they reduce afterload. Aldosterone antagonist diuretics have the additional benefit of decreasing morbidity and mortality by decreasing remodeling, that is vascular fibrosis. This reduced preload results in reduction of pulmonary and peripheral edema. This also there is a reduction of cardiac size, which lead to improved efficiency and cardiac output, while reduced afterload also increases cardiac output. Next group is angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors as well as angiotensin receptor blockers and related agents, which are now considered as drug of choice. They are very safe as compared to digitalis, which can give a lot of toxicity and difficulty because of narrow therapeutic index, difficult to control the dose. But these angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors and ARBs, they are very safe. ACE inhibitors, captopril and enalapril, mechanism is they reduces angiotensin 2 production by inhibiting angiotensin converting enzyme or peptide dipeptidase enzyme. There is arterial and venous dilatation, which is going to reduce pre and afterload, also reduces salt and water retention by reducing aldosterone secretion. So that is going to reduce pre and afterload. There is also reduced angiotensin level, also reduces sympathetic activity through decreasing angiotensin's presynaptic effects on norepinephrine release, and finally reduce the long-term remodeling of the heart and vessels, reduction in mortality and morbidity. Then angiotensin receptor blockers, losartan, valsartan, irbesartan, they appear to have similar but more limited beneficial effects. Angiotensin receptor blockers should be considered in patients who cannot tolerate ACE inhibitors because of their dry cough and angioedema with ACE inhibitors. So ARBs are safe in those patients who cannot tolerate ACE or ACE inhibitors. ACE inhibitors must be considered along with diuretics as first-line therapy for chronic failure. ACE inhibitors are beneficial in all subsets of patients, from those who are asymptomatic to those in severe chronic failure. So they are very useful drug as far as to control congestive cardiac failure. As far as the side effect of ACE inhibitors are concerned, dry cough, acute renal failure, particularly in patients with bilateral renal artery stenosis or stenosis of the renal artery of a solitary kidney, angioedema, hyperkalemia, teratogenic effects. Cough and angioedema are less common with angiotensin receptor blocker or ARBs. Direct vasodilators in acute and chronic heart failure, the mechanism is they provide a reduction in preload through venodilatation, a reduction in afterload through arterial dilatation, or both. Long-term use of hydralazine and isosorbide dinitrate can also reduce damaging remodeling of the heart. Arterial dilators, hydralazine, venodilators, nitrates, combined arterial and venous nitroprusside. In case of when fatigue is severe, you can choose arterial dilators, while when dyspnea is more marked, you can choose venous that means the nitrates. When there is severe chronic failure, both are recommended. Next drug is nasiritide, a synthetic form of the endogenous peptide brain natriuretic peptide BNP, approved for use in acute cardiac failure as it increases cyclic GMP in smooth muscle cells and causes vasodilatation. Also causes diuresis, has a short half-life of about 18 minutes. Bolus intravenous dose followed by continuous infusion. Excessive hypotension is the most common adverse effects. Significant renal damage and deaths have resulted in application of extra warnings. Measurement of endogenous BNP has been proposed as a diagnostic test because plasma concentration rise is in most patients with heart failure. Then the next group is beta adrenoceptor blockers. They can be only used in chronic heart failure, stable class 2 to class 4, but they are very dangerous because they can precipitate acute heart failure. So one has to be careful. Studies with bisoprolol, carvedilol and metoprolol showed a reduction in mortality in patients with stable severe heart failure, but this effect was not observed with other beta blockers. So only these three. Please remember that whenever you name beta adrenoceptor blocker or beta blocker for the treatment of chronic heart failure, you should remember these three names: bisoprolol, carvedilol and metoprolol. Mechanism is they reduces remodeling by catecholamines. They're decreasing the apoptosis, decreasing upregulation of beta receptors, decreasing heart rate, reduce remodeling through inhibition of mitogenic activity of catecholamines. Such therapy is beneficial if initiated very cautiously at low doses. Several months of therapy may be required before improvement is noted with these beta blockers. Then treatment of acute heart failure, best treated with emergency revascularization using either coronary angioplasty or a stent or a thrombolytic agent. Inotropic, the mainstay for sympathomimetic treatment of acute heart failure. Intravenous treatment is the rule in acute heart failure. Diuretics, furosemide to relieve acute pulmonary edema. Inotropic, dopamine and dobutamine for severe hypertension. Vasodilators like nitroprusside sodium, nitroglycerin, nasiritide to decrease afterload and increase cardiac output. Long-term treatment therapy directed at non-cardiac targets is more valuable in the long-term treatment of heart failure than traditional positive inotropic agents like cardiac glycoside, digitalis. Only agents in current use that actually prolong life in patients with chronic heart failure are angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors, ARBs are angiotensin receptor blockers. Second class is beta blockers. The third are aldosterone receptor antagonists, spironolactone, and vasodilator like hydralazine and nitrate therapy. Steps in the treatment of chronic heart failure. Number one is reduce workload of the heart, that is by limit activity, put on bed rest. Number two is reduce weight. Number three is control hypertension. Then Second step is restrict sodium intake. Third is restrict water, which is required rarely. Number 4 is give diuretics as first line. Number 5, give angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors or angiotensin receptor blockers as first line, recommended in all cases of chronic heart failure. Number 6, give digitalis if systolic dysfunction with third heart sound or atrial fibrillation is present. Seventh step is give beta blockers to the patient with stable class 2 to class 4 heart failure. Eighth step is aldosterone antagonist in all with moderate to severe heart failure. Step number 9 is give vasodilator. Number 10, cardiac desynchronization if wide QRS interval is present in normal sinus rhythm. And last but not the least step is cardiac transplant, which is being practiced in some centers, even in Rawalpindi. Some people they tried cardiac transplantation, but in West and in America, in South Africa, this is very commonly practiced.